Hi folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're looking at Ben Wheatley's new Netflix film, Rebecca. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat, this isn't the usual sort of film that we'd be covering on this channel. It's not my usual sort of genre. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't be reviewing it if it wasn't for Ben Wheatley's name being on it. But I think it's quite interesting to look at someone who I would definitely say is a cult director doing a much bigger, more mainstream film. This does also come with the caveat of I haven't read the Daphne du Maurier novel, I haven't seen the Hitchcock film, and I decided not to track those down so that I could review this film purely as what it is. So if you were looking for some sort of in-depth comparison, I'm really sorry, that's not what you're getting. But stick around anyway, because I've got things to tell you.
The young lady will be joining me.
The plot follows a young woman played by Lily James. We never actually learn her first name. While she's working in Monte Carlo, she falls for and marries wealthy widower Maxim de Winter, played here by Armie Hammer. Everything in their relationship seems fine until they return to his country home of Manderley, where it becomes clear that the spirit of his first wife, Rebecca, still hangs heavy over both Maxim and his staff, headed up by the ghostly Mrs. Danvers, played here by Kristen Scott Thomas.
Welcome to Manderley.
Whilst I can't knock any of the performances in the film, it really is a sort of triple header of three key performances. Lily James's new Mrs. De Winters is sort of brilliantly out of place. It's whether she's making sort of bumbling mistakes of etiquette while she's in Monte Carlo, or whether she's stepping on the wrong toes when she's at Manderley. You always get this sense that she's struggling to adapt to this new world that she's been thrust into, but it never feels too cartoonish. I always thought that she seemed like a real person reacting in a realistic manner. I think this is really helped by the fact that the film is from her perspective, so you're constantly seeing her change and evolve as the sort of plot keeps twisting and turning. Armie Hammer also gives a really great performance. His Maxim de Winter manages to always effortlessly switch between being charming and quite warm and then sort of threatening and quite cold. But the most important part of this is that no matter which one of those he's doing, there's always the memory of the other. So even when you're being charmed by him, there's always that feeling that something's off. But when he's being that more sort of intense, off-putting character, you still have those hints that he can be really charming, and it means that you're never quite able to pin him down or trust him or hate him 100%. But all this being said, Kristen Scott Thomas is probably the person you are going to remember most out of this film. Part of that is because while she's playing Danvers, she is so like ghostly pale, and she seems to even appear in frames as sort of some sort of spirit. Like you don't realise she's there, and then suddenly she's. But again, there's this sort of level of humanity to her, even though she's quite striking and intense and definitely off-put. You can always feel that no matter where the plot goes, she fits perfectly into it. As the sort of plot shifts and changes, her character seems to almost shift and change with it perfectly. Her performance is always pitched at just the right level.
She's still here. Can you feel her?
It really helps that the script here is really solid. I had a lot of hesitations about seeing Ben Wheatley's name on this and Jane Goldman's name, given that this is Rebecca, it's, you know, a classic novel, it's a Hitchcock remake, and I was thinking, are we going to end up with a version of Rebecca in which everyone swears all the time, given the very fruity dialogue that you get in a lot of their other work? But actually, the script owes so much more to that sort of classic Hollywood style that the Hitchcock film would have had. But what we actually have here is this sort of much more classic Hollywood way of delivering lines, and the way that the lines are written. Everyone does speak in this sort of overly scripted, slightly overly acted way, but it suits the characters and it suits the way that the story and the mystery unfolds. I mean, early on, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, because people talk about Manderley like it's going out of fashion, it's dropped so often. But then you settle into this sort of classic style of delivery, and I do think it really, really suits the film, and it gives it that slightly different edge. I'm quite glad that we didn't end up with a version of Rebecca in which everyone speaks like a boring, normal person. I think it really suits the style of the film to be delivered this way.
I wonder what she's thinking about you. Taking her husband, using her name.
Now, I can understand that that style of dialogue might not be for everyone, but what surely must be for everyone is the cinematography in this film, because it is bloody gorgeous. I mean, it doesn't matter whether we're in the sort of warm, yellowy glows of Monte Carlo or these sort of cold, vaguely desolate blues and greys that we have at Manderley. It always looks absolutely stunning. And I think you can really tell that director of photography Laurie Rose is having a fantastic time being able to photograph these beautiful locations and these incredibly gorgeous people. A lot of this is helped by the fact that there is so much detail in the film, and the cinematography really takes its time to examine all of this detail. And sometimes I think period films having too much detail can be quite grating, because I want to be following the plot. That's the great thing in Rebecca, everything helps to serve the plot. I mean, I would love to know how much money in this film went on monogramming things, but all that monogramming is incredibly important to the story, and that's why it really, really works. Similarly, nearly every costume in this film is either gorgeous or gaudy in a perfect manner. I mean, Lily James, I don't think she has a bad outfit in this entire film. She always looks stunning. And I think Armie Hammer gets some great costumes, but he also has the most horrendous mustard coloured suit I've ever seen. It is absolutely hideous. I think a lot of this visual splendour is really helped because the film is edited so incredibly well. I really had this feeling going into Rebecca that it could be quite a stodgy film. I think we all think of period films as being quite a trudge, but the editing in this film, when mixed with the fantastic cinematography, gives the film such a light-footed feeling. It seems to just effortlessly glide through the storyline. We're just deposited at the parts of the story that we actually need. It never felt like in its 2-hour runtime there was anything that needed to be trimmed out of the film, and I think that's really impressive. The score for Rebecca is also absolutely wonderful. I mean, I am biased, I am a massive Clint Mansell fan, but I still think this is one of the best things he's done. It has got all of the trappings of his signature style, which I really have been trying to figure out how to pin down, but I can't. It's just very Clint Mansell. But he's managed to merge it perfectly with this sort of classic Hollywood style, a lot of the instrumentation there. But I really like, there's also this sort of hint of folk, which is quite strange, and I think it really works. I mean, there are a couple of folky sort of songs played in the film as well, so it sort of helps to marry all of that together. I mean, he's always been so good at orchestrating strings, but I think one of the things that I took away from listening to this score the most is its use of acoustic guitar mixed with piano, and it seemed to marry up so well, and it always seems to marry up perfectly with what's on screen. I think this is really helped by the film has quite a few montages that let the score just have room to breathe and to go its own way. And I think as well, the score has a lot of that momentum that helps with all that sort of light editing. Also, the score works so incredibly well outside of the film. I listened to it while I was writing this and I constantly got distracted by thinking, wow, this is a really pretty bit of music. And then I was like, oh, I haven't written a paragraph in 5 minutes.
Has Max ever talked to you about the accident?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I really didn't know what to expect going into this film. I actually went in probably quite nervous. I was like, I don't know if all of the names attached to this are going to be able to pull the film off. And I mean, I'm very sorry to everyone involved for thinking that they couldn't do this, because it is really, 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 really good. I know I am biased because, you know, if you've seen my Kill List review, I said that Ben Wheatley was one of the best directors working today. So I did go into it wanting it to be good, but I do think it's genuinely so good and so well made. I can understand, and I know it has, rubbed some people up the wrong way, especially I presume if you love the novel or love the Hitchcock film, because any time seeing something done different, you're going to find things that you don't like as much. But I think if you treat it as its own film, it's really, really good. I mean, for me, all of the twists worked really well. I always felt engaged by the story. I thought the performances were great, and they had to be for this sort of film. This is the sort of film that, I use this stupid term, it's like a cinematic bath, because everything in it just flows so evenly that you can just sort of sink into the film, let it wash over you. It's a really enjoyable film to watch because it has that such a sort of light feeling. I just thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. It didn't feel like it demanded effort to watch. That's it, it's effortless. It's effortlessly good and effortlessly enjoyable. Or at least that's what I think. What have you thought of Rebecca? Have you seen it yet? Does this review make you want to see it? Let me know down in the comments, like and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos, and I'll see you next time.